Whatever it is that God has put on your life, I'm telling you right now, by the Spirit of the Lord, that you are not done, that you have not been passed over, and that there is still purpose and there is still destiny in your bones. If dry bones can live and become an army, those who which have flesh can rise up in their calling and their anointing and take on a new mantle. Most people are too busy complaining about in the position of where they're at, but it's the pressure that makes the diamond. It's the friction and being uncomfortable and the constant irritation that creates the pearl. I'd hate to be a pearl inside of a clam. Like constantly just, I'm agitated all the time. Oh, wait, now I'm a pearl. Clam, oyster, whatever. I ate SpongeBob. I don't know. But I do know that God wants to bring breakthrough in this hour. He wants to bring transformation in your life. You serve the God of breakthrough. That He has desired for you to be the head and not the tail. To be above and not beneath. That you should not want anything. Because He shall provide. Because He is your Father. And He says that His voice will go over.
Good morning, or good evening, or afternoon, or you're in the future. I don't know. I feel like this is always the most awkward part of going live every single day is I don't know how to address everybody because like we could be on so many different like platforms and arenas throughout everywhere, like from like, you know, Malaysia to like, you know, California to Hawaii. Like, dear Lord, if you're in Hawaii, why are you awake right now? What is it, like 3 a.m. in Hawaii? Anyways, welcome to the broadcast. This Tuesdays is all about growing in the prophetic. At least that's what we've now made it. That's what it's about. I mean, it's about tacos and it's about growing in the prophetic. I can see Stephen agreeing with me in the virtual green room. He's really done some... really stepped up his game in his studio background. I'm just kidding. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking and just because, anyways, I'm just going to let Steven come on and just stop me from my own madness.
No, I'm surprised you still have a voice today, buddy. Like we talked about yesterday, that was kind of a marathon online session for you as a Monday.
You know, it was, but it was fun. It like the present, like I was telling you, like, you know, I found a buddy of mine that's a worship leader that really just captures the heart of the Father. And that, like, I literally went from an event called Wild Things or Wild Ones, or I don't remember which one it was called. You know, I just wanted to go where the wild things are. That's all I was trying to do. And so I was in an event titled that to then turn around and going into something about the heart of the Father. And it was like, as far as the East is from the West, what were the two events? Because like, one was like, raw, you know, like a wrestling event, you know, and all of a sudden, like, you're Braun Strowman and you come in and you're like, raw, and then all of a sudden you're in this other event and you're in a day spa, basically. There we go. One of the guys, Daniel, was in it and he said it's Wild Ones. Now try pronouncing that last name, bro.
Yeah.
It's Bazooski. I finally got it. After being like having him with me a few times, I've finally gotten it when he's not on the broadcast. I just call him Daniel. And then I said, if I only refer to people by their first name, it's because I can't pronounce this one last name.
Makes sense to me, man. I'm good with it.
So anyhow, it was such a contrast of things going on. And then, like I said, one of the events, I literally, like, no one ever saw me. It wasn't even broadcasted on my own Facebook. It was actually just someone else's that I was just helping, you know, because they were like, we don't know what we're doing and we don't want to, like, you know, look like we're holding someone's, you know, family, you know, for hostage. And so, and I was like, I got you. Let me help you. And so, but it was good. It was good to help them. So anyhow, man, how are you? How's Myrtle?
I'm good, man. Myrtle's warming up. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
It's gonna be It's always good to hang out, man. I appreciate my Tuesday times with you virtually, but it'd be cool to hang out
Right?
in
I feel
person.
like,
So,
Luke Combs' song, like 6 feet apart.
yes.
Well,
Yes.
no, I just admit that I listen to country, but whatever.
That's you can edit that later if you need to.
No, I can't. It's live, bro.
Well, you can still go back and edit it for those that didn't see it. So
I'm not that concerned. I listen to country.
There
I've
we
been to
go.
a Garth Brooks concert.
Well, see, that's
That was one of the most memorable events of my
I
life.
bet.
I mean, it's Garth Brooks.
It's true.
I even once wrote an article for like a men's online magazine about what is it, 6 life lessons you can learn from country music, and 5 of them were from Garth Brooks songs.
It makes sense. He was a forerunner in that area.
Yeah, I mean, he took other people's songs and made them famous. People were coming on right now going, I thought this was about maturing in the prophetic. We are. We're teaching you to think metaphorically first.
Yep.
That, just one of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers.
On that note, I'd be completely happy if anybody listening to this took what we said and made it better. So it's really
I was just quoting Garth Brooks, bro. I was just quoting Garth Brooks. I would be happy if anyone took one. Here's what happens when Steven and I didn't get a chance to do our preamble, our pre-show. Our pre-show is Steven and I going through everything we're not going to say.
It's true.
On the live.
It's true. I feel like you did not get that chance to purge pre-meeting. So
I like how I didn't get that chance to purge.
You've had enough coffee today for both of us, it seems like. So we're gonna have.
I haven't.
Really good time.
I've only had one drink of it. There's still so much to go. That's what I'm saying. Yesterday wasn't that bad of a. I was tired at the end of the day, but I mean, anyways, let's.
All right.
Let's hop into this. Let's pray and see if God shows up.
Absolutely. Lord, we thank you for today. Lord, I thank you for the opportunity to just even sit here with Wes, to participate with all those that have a chance to log on and listen and interact with us and chat. Lord, I pray that the spirit of wisdom and revelation would be here today. Lord, you are always with us, but we decide to turn our attention to you today. We want to turn aside and learn something new about you. Lord, that there would be an attribute or an image or a likeness or some level of understanding that would come that would cause us to fall more deeply in love with you ourselves and give us renewed hope and passion to reveal you to those that we come in contact with. Or we just thank you for the opportunity and the freedom that we have right now to be able to communicate about you, to communicate with each other, and that we can all grow, we can all learn, and we can all be encouraged during this time. In Jesus' name.
Amen. So, where do we begin? Or where would you like to begin? I really just want to retitle this Wesley's Weekly Discipleship with Steven, so that he doesn't act like an idiot. I'm talking about me.
Sure. I don't. You could. People can choose which one that would be about it. It would be.
We're gonna take a poll later on.
I think so. One of the things I was thinking about today, this morning, this is just usually how the Lord messes with me, man. I can be thinking about something or preparing in a certain way, and then a sentence or a topic or a picture or a song comes on, and there's some sort of marker or indicator in it that shows me where I need to jump in or where my entry point really is. And then after that, then I'm just kind of along for the ride too. But
I understand that life.
when I was thinking about maturing in the prophetic, man, I thought about how the Lord treated me in the way that I got started, right? Mm-hmm. And he met me in so many interesting ways early on that caused me to understand both what his heart was for me, but also what his heart was for other people, in a way that no matter what comes afterwards, you're not changing my mind about this concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There were some things that he did early on foundationally with me and for me that caused me to go, man, I'm going to hold on to this no matter what someone tries to tell me about, say that it should be this way, say that it should be that way. I know because I've tasted of it directly from the Lord, and I've seen the evidence of what happens in other people's lives as they're changed and transformed by his love.
Yeah. Does
that make sense?
I mean, to me it does. I mean, I've actually often found myself going like, my experience with people has always, like, people will tend to want to tell me like the worst thing they feel they have done.
Sure.
And normally it's like, listen, like, my mind is made up about you.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to change it. And, and to them, it's like huge. It's like, gargantuan. And when they tell me, I'm like, that's it?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's often like, well, God's mind is made up about us too. If it wasn't, would he still be with us? Like, realistically.
If it wasn't, he wouldn't let me be prophetic anymore.
What? Come on. If God's mind was not already made up about us, there would be no purpose of, the purpose of the prophetics is to reveal Jesus, but often what we're doing is we're reminding people of who they truly are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we would not have, our gifts would be taken away if he had some sort of condition or limitation on the things that he's already given us, and the fact that his heart is always for us. If at any point his heart is no longer for us, we are dead.
That's so true. And so, like, it's heavy because it's like, anyways, continue on.
I'm
letting that sink in.
If the God of the universe keeps track of how many sparrows are currently flying in the air and on the earth, and how many hairs we all have, which are a whole lot more during these last couple months than there have ever been on the earth, because there are no hairstylists right now.
Unless you've been into my underground barbershop.
Sure. Well, we won't talk about that on this broadcast, but
we don't speak of that.
I took matters into my own hands and chopped my own hair off, and now it's time to go back and try to get someone to fix it. But the point is, there is a detail-oriented God of the entire universe that is so personally intimate with the details of your life that he's not a micromanager in any way, but he's so personal and detailed that he will meet you in the seemingly smallest areas that matter to you, simply because they just matter to you.
Come on.
Right? And so the point is, I would have never gotten a chance to get started if he needed to look good by me doing it. Mm. Now think about how differently we as leaders oftentimes feel that the way people act underneath of us are a representation of us.
Yeah.
Right? We've been trained as leaders, which is a trap, that we feel like whatever happens in the people that we're responsible for is a reflection of us, when in fact it's just a reflection of where they currently stand with him. Does that make sense?
It makes it, like, I get it, because like I've done it. Oh God, this person.
Okay, let's say,
and I've done it because like I'm like, and like it instantly, like that, wow, Wes, really?
Right, because if he was concerned about how we could potentially tarnish or damage his reputation, number one, he never would have released the disciples, and number two, he surely never would have released us.
Yeah. Because
the way God chooses to release people is he gives them enough to get started, rather than trying to get out of them everything that they should have been delivered of before they get started. The process of life, the process of what they go through, the path that they're on, is actually the thing that delivers them. He's not concerned with trying to get all of the potential pitfalls and landmines out of you before you get started. He knows if you'll just get started with him, those things will come to the surface, and then they'll get delivered, and you'll be free as you go.
Yeah.
Right. So here's a fun story. When I first started really, prophesying and doing this whole thing, right? We spent hundreds of hours doing this stuff at Morning Star, and we would every Friday night we would have a School of the Spirit meeting, and we would have these little booths that were set up, where people could come in after the service and they could spend 10 or 15 minutes with a group of 2 or 3 people that would, just simply try to, edify, exhort, comfort, encourage them with something that was from the Lord, right? Now my whole internship is a prophetic internship, right? That my goal is you wind me up and I prophesy for hours and hours and hours. That was my whole internship, right? So I love it. I think it's a fantastic. I can do it for hours. It's awesome. But we would get into these times where the other interns, we would actually, and it's okay to admit now because I'm not there anymore, but we would actually have, because we were competitive with each other, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's never happened for anyone else, but for me, I was competitive in wanting to, be more prophetic than my fellow interns, right? So we would have contests on who could make the most people cry. And I don't mean like cry like bad cry. I mean like cry like they were deeply touched by the Lord cry.
Never had that contest.
Right. Well, see, you haven't quite lived yet, Wes. You still until you get into some of these crazy areas. When I tell you that the Lord has met me in the area of my hunger mixed with everything else that was inside, I can tell you, I promise you that if he was concerned about his reputation, he would have cut me off a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right?
I get it.
So we would get into these times, and at the end of the night, we'd come out and be like, man, words of knowledge, I just zap details, and these people just, I had 2 people break down during our times in there, and it was like he used my wrong motivation of being competitive to grow in coming closer to him so that I could reveal his love to other people, right?
Yeah.
And what he saw out of it was people were more proficiently touched by the prophetic ministry because I was pressing into him, even if my motives weren't completely pure.
I feel like Paul talks about that.
He absolutely does, right? But when you give a real life example, it's like ugly.
Yeah,
what I mean?
ugly.
But I don't have anything to lose, so I can actually talk about the secrets of like what really happens behind the veil, right? Because I don't have anything to protect, right? So
what's there to protect anyway?
There is, right? So there is nothing. I'm not going to lose donors. I'm not going to. when you don't have any of that stuff, you can't lose it, right? So there's a liberty that comes in being able to go, man, freely you've received, freely give. And if you talk about the real life examples of what was going on, I like to tell people I'm an advocate for good character, good integrity, good morals. I believe in all that stuff. I want to grow in my wisdom and stature. I want to grow in favor with God and man like Jesus did. But in order to do that, you have to start with who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever want to mature in the prophetic, you have to start where you are right now, which is having mixed motives. Some people want to be seen and flashy. Some people have insecurity issues. Whatever that looks like, it's still important for you to get started in the desire that the Lord is breathing on, knowing that like the parable of the wheat and the tares, the wheat and the tares all come to maturity at the same time. I like to say it this way: your seasons of greatest fruitfulness are the seasons of your greatest deliverance.
I feel like, that's so contradicting. I had to think of the word. It's so contradicting to like what it's. You're going to get delivered and you're going to be completely free and clean. And then you're going to walk in like this type of perfection. And I'm like, it's usually like, like you said, like your greatest moments of screw ups is probably going to be like the greatest moments of like fruit.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if in your weakness, his power is made perfect. And I'm still not, I still don't even like quoting that scripture, right? That's not one of the ones that you love to hold on to.
I'm not good at like putting out my weaknesses.
No, because we haven't ever been told we've been told in the Bible, but aside from the Bible, every place else has told us to do the opposite.
Right.
And it's very hard to go against the flow and go with what the Bible really wants you to do rather than what the religious systems that have been built tell you to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's... Yeah, I'm just like... it's like, it's so opposite of... We want to show our strengths, and it's kind of like... And even going through my head right now, I have all the excuses of why.
Yeah.
All of them. Well, he created these strengths inside of me. I should exemplify them. I should magnify the strengths that he put in me. But it's really saying, nah, show your weaknesses and it'll be him. Like, and that's, it's like, I think about like where, my main message in all of this, the ministry, Love Speaks, based out of Isaiah 63:7. I will forever tell the loving kindness of God. And it's like, God, why is that like my life verse? Mm-hmm. I'm critical of myself, which obviously is going to bleed into other people. Like it, but then like people are like, you love so well. And I'm like, you don't understand how critical I really am.
Right.
Like I am my own worst critic, like as we all are, but I'm like, I'm not good at this. Like I could be, like I look back and go, no, and I try to tell people, like, I guess that is the one area that I'm like, listen, I'm not great at this at all whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Like this whole like, loving people thing, like, mm-hmm. And it comes back to like, it was a couple years ago when I was trying to write a book about it. I was like, yeah, I got this down. I got this message down. At least I think I understand part of it. And then the Lord goes, you're not writing the book. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why? And he's like, you don't even understand the message. I was like, what do you mean I don't understand the message? Mm-hmm. And he goes, you literally don't understand the message. I was like, I've been practicing this message for 13 years or trying to learn, like talking about learning to love people. And he goes, that's the issue. Mm-hmm. You think I was trying to teach you how to love people. I've actually been trying to teach you to love yourself this whole time.
Yeah, that's good.
And that will reflect how you love others. And so like when I'm like, I'm not good at it. And then going, all right, Lord, this is clearly going to have to be you because I'm not good at it.
But the cool part for those that don't know or maybe have just seen you on here a couple times, he's not saying that so that people will say, no, you really are good at it.
Yeah, I'm literally just saying like, no, I'm not. I'm literally telling you right. I'm not. And the only way that it's possible, feasible, and the only way that it ever looks like I might be okay at it is because of what he does. Because of the conversations you and I actually how this whole thing started right. was this really long paragraph about basically I Martin Luthered the prophetic. That's really what it is.
And I Martin Luthered message wall.
And no, it's posted to my own self.
Oh, okay.
It's there, but I made it only so I can see it, just in the event that I ever wanted to go back to it. Yeah. But I Martin Luthered the prophetic and sent it to Stephen, and then he responded he goes, well, as a prophetic editor, which just kind of diffused a lot, but we were already talking about doing something like this about integrity in the prophetic, and then it just kind of broadened out a little bit as far as let's really talk about going into this. And so that's like where we're at. It took us 24 minutes to figure that part out.
No, but it's been really good. There's no
agenda. There's no script. We don't have teleprompters, which would probably be helpful for you guys if we did. But then you wouldn't get the fun stories in between that we just go, oh, you remember this one time? And anyway, so what Stephen was talking about, like, it's in our weaknesses that he's displayed as strong. We get to, and I think if more people were willing to go, hey, like, listen, this is not my area. Like, I'm not good at this. But then it's like, because they do look like they're good at it, and people see that it's God, imagine what people would actually be able to truly accomplish because they could learn to trust and rely on God.
It would make it relatable in a way that if there would be no ability for people to disassociate from the message. If they saw it, that's why if you saw the Apostle Paul after he had been through some of the things that he had been through, we would not think of Paul the way that we read Paul. We read Paul without the benefit of seeing the package that it came in. And so we see this confidence in the writing. We see this really clear, powerful message that's coming out and basically says things the way that they are, right?
He's very matter of fact.
But the vessel that it's coming through leads you to go, this guy has been through hell. Mm-hmm. And if he's saying this, he's not saying it as a concept or something that other people should try. He's saying it as someone who has tried all of these other things and failed and had been beaten and almost killed and left for dead. And so the thing that he's arrived at is his foundational cornerstone of Christ, because he has nothing else left. It wasn't, man, look at what I've built, look at what I've accomplished, look at what's going on. It's working, so it must be the Lord. It must be the right thing. This was a guy who has gotten himself up off the mat time after time after time, and no intimidation, no persecution, no adversity is going to deter him from imploring people about the simplicity of the message of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so I think if I love to humanize the scriptures. I love what the Chosen series has done so far to try to bring things to life in a way that humanizes some of the biblical stories, because that's the way that I read when I read the scriptures. I read, what would it be like? What would the struggles be? What would the turmoil be? What was the setting like? What were those people feeling? What kind of accusation or torment were they having to endure when they're in this situation? And some of the things that rob us of that experience is that because we know the conclusion of the story before we begin reading the story, we miss the struggle and the tension and the turmoil that existed throughout the entire chapter or throughout the entire story. Right? We lose some of that humanity or the human factor of what it was like to be weak and to be flawed and still accomplish these amazing things.
I think we see it all the time where, like, when people are like, well, this is what the church should be like. And I'm like, you're clearly missing what's not written.
Right.
Because you read the strengths, you read the end results, like, oh, the church should be like the book of Acts. When they said that they were in the upper room in one accord, the idea of one accord I believe is going to be completely different than what other people are thinking it is. Mm-hmm. Because one accord, like, I've been in a literal upper room where you have a group of us who are hungry for the Lord, seeking the Lord, and we're all praying for unity in the room, which was probably the most unity we had. But the Lord moved through that. And so, like, I imagine, like, that upper room when people go, oh, we just need unity, like there was in the upper room. I think it was probably much more simplified. Hey, he told us to come here. But they all probably had their own individual opinion of what was going to happen.
Yeah, and whoever was the most stubborn is the one that caused it to have to wait the longest. Right? Which probably would have been one of us, right? If we had been in that room, everybody would have been like, we're broken. We've lasted as long as we could last.
Quit making it difficult.
please just fold, give up and just die, right? But that's the process of unity.
I'd be like, I'm strong.
Yeah, exactly. The process of unity was them coming to the end of themselves to where they no longer saw themselves individually, but they looked around the room and could not distinguish each other in the way that, man, this guy has his opinion, this guy has his opinion. They actually had died to their will and their opinion and had subjected themselves to be obedient to what the Lord had told them to do past their point of being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's Kayla, who's watching, literally took the words out of my mouth. So good.
But wait, one thing you mentioned the other day, right? Or not the other day, maybe earlier today. I don't know.
I've mentioned it in the past.
Yeah, maybe I just heard you mention it in your head. I don't know. But the point is, there's this concept of moving from being project-based with the Lord to being relationship-based with the Lord.
Yes,
Now,
I've said that before in the past.
So I was like the poster child of being project-based for the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Do the work of the Lord, like with my gifts and my talents. Hey, you told me something to do. I was prophetic. You showed me what was coming, and I would go knock it out for you. Right. And then I would come back when that part was done and I was ready for the next thing. Or if I needed your help to get me over the top at the end, then I would call on you and, believe in faith that you were going to help make this thing happen, right? But in reality, it was through so much of my own strength, through so much of my own talent and gifting that things were accomplished. Now, does that mean that people did not get touched? No. Does that mean that people did not really get healed? No. Does that mean people's lives were not encouraged by the prophetic words that were given? No. It just simply means that in an area where the Lord wanted to do something with me, he had to watch me take the strong position and do it on my own and say that I was doing it together. Now, how many of us in a relationship are secure enough to allow the other person to do the wrong thing or to miss the whole point of why we're together and still long suffer that and go, okay, well, they didn't quite get it this time, but I'm going to be hopeful and believe that in the next time they might figure out that I'm not giving them things to do because I need them to do something. I'm simply giving them things to do because I want to be with them. And I can't tell you the transformation that took place when he echoed these words to me and said, do you want to stop doing things for me and start doing things with me?
Wow.
And of course, it was one of those when I was chewed up and spit out and in a very, in a down season where I had nothing to give anyway, right? So since I wasn't feeling strong, there was an ability for honesty to come out, right?
That's always...
Yeah. Sometimes strength is a barrier to honesty. So when things are working, it's very hard to, be able to accurately describe what's going on. So in a moment of weakness and honesty, I was able to say, yes, that sounds better, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And you know what his first response to me was? You're right, but in order to not keep doing things for me, I'm going to have to shut down your ability to see for a while. And that's when I just kind of hung my head and went, oh, man, I'm not even sure I know what I'm asking for right now.
That's intense, man.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. I had used my gifting in the prophetic and the ability to see what's coming down the pipe, but I was always running to meet him there rather than walking to arrive there. And so I would either get there at the wrong time, or I would get there, without being equipped in the right way. Because the whole point was, if I stayed in step with him, then we would get there at the right moment. But because I was prophetic, I would always run ahead and be there so that something good could happen for him. And it was out of a good heart. It was out of a right motivation. I wanted to please the Lord, man. since I've been a kid, there's been something inside of me that just wants to please the Lord, right? I want to walk with the Lord. I want to please the Lord. I want other people to experience the things that I've tasted of and experienced. But even in that exuberance and that hunger, I completely missed that he didn't need me to change the world for him. He just simply wanted to change my world by walking with him.
Wow.
And so I went supernaturally blind for a while. It was like Paul, he struck me with blindness. and the bad part is the frustrating, maddening part is when people would need something or ask me for a word from the Lord, it would still work. But if I wanted to look into anything from my own life, forget it.
Kind of going off of the whole weakness, strength thing, blindness is like, I'm reminded of this story of, it was one of the times that Brad was visiting, and Brad's ministering, and it's kind of a passionate, worshipful moment, and I just hear this, like, I'm going to describe it how I saw it. I heard this, like, intrusive noise to my to the left of me on the other side of the room, and I'm like, oh Lord, what is that? Oh God, that's one of my students. Jesus. No. Why? This is what's going. I'm just exposing myself.
Sure.
It'll be out on a Christian magazine later. But I'm going to expose myself. And I'm sitting there going, oh God, why? This is one of my students. And he goes, stop being so critical. And I said, sorry, I'm incredibly distracted by the random spider that showed up in the middle of this broadcast. And I'm like, I don't know if you're here to make me Spider-Man. Are you symbolic of witchcraft? Or are you just a spider because it's hot outside? But he's like 4 feet from me. And I'm like, huh, are you... I mean, if I get to climb walls, I'm down. But...
All of those sound like good things. That's a no-lose proposition on any of those avenues that you described. So continue.
Right, I'll continue back in my story. And so this is what goes on, and so anyways, I'm here and I'm at this event and Brad's speaking, and I'm like, oh, this person's, they're manifesting something, and the Lord's like, quit being so critical of them, and I'm like, all right. He goes, if you continue to be critical, I'll take your sight. And my first thought was, you mean like I won't be prophetic? He goes, if you continue to be critical, you will not see them. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm playing dumb at this point.
Right.
Because I'm not being loving. Mm-hmm. And he goes, no, if you do not stop being critical, I will take your sight.
Yeah.
And my first response to the Lord was this. And I clearly knew it was the Lord. That wasn't one of those moments like, is this the enemy? I knew it was God. And he goes, so my immediate response, where's that at in the Bible? And he goes, Paul.
Yes.
And I said, oh, I should stop being so critical. Mm-hmm. Critical is another word for judgmental.
Right.
And the Lord was dealing with my judgmental heart in the middle of that. And so at that point, I want to go sit down and weep. I want to crawl inside of, like, there was a closet next to the stage. Mm-hmm. I wanted to crawl inside of that closet and hide. And I'm trying to, like, find somewhere I can, like, because here's the thing, it wasn't like a rebuke in the sense of like God smacking me, like, but there was so much love that I just wanted to change and not be so critical. And like Brad being Brad, from the stage, hey Wes, you got this, come minister with me. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to go hide, and that's the thing, is like when we succumb to his voice, even in our weaknesses, he loves us through them so that he can become strong. And he wants to change our perspective. He wants to change, like he wants us to see things from his perspective. Because when we can see things from the way he sees them, we get to see them from a completely different light, and we see the life inside of them, where we would look and go, that's annoying, that's there's nothing but death in that place. But when he shows us, we see the life. We see the potential. We see what you see dry bones, but I see an army.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, we're, all right, God. And I just remember going, all right, Lord, forgive me.
It's really that simple.
Yeah. And then, I turned from me and went to him.
Mm-hmm.
And let me bring it into the screen. I turned from me. I'm used to being like wide angled.
Yes.
And so, but I turned from me and turned to him. And just began to put my focus on him. Because even in that, the trick of the enemy would be, get focused on you. And where you think every area that you need to be changed.
Yeah.
So
now think about what was happening from the other side too, in even the invitation that to come up here and to minister, right? That is the Lord covering you in a transgression, let's just say it that way.
Yeah.
And knowing that because you had invited the critical spirit to be a part of your life, that the way to move out of that is not to focus on getting the critical spirit out of your life. The way is to tap into the Lord's love for somebody else, which delivers you of being critical of them, right?
Yeah.
So even as he's saying, if you do this, it will go bad for you. When you said, I don't want to go down that road, then he opened up the way of escape for you.
Yeah.
Right. Which is living out the example of him making a way of escape. When we are tempted to go down this road, and all we have to do in ourselves is cry out. It doesn't matter if it's verbal, nonverbal, whatever it is. If we posture and go, I don't want to do that. I don't want to miss you. I don't want to fill in the blank. Then all of a sudden something appears that if we participate with that, it'll actually lead us out of the thing that we don't want to be a part of anymore. But it won't be by focusing on the thing we don't want. It'll be by pressing into the thing that he wants for us, that we ultimately want for ourselves.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And this happens if in order to grow in the prophetic, there are times when you have a right to say certain things. Right? If we're really getting down to the nuts and bolts of maturing in the prophetic, there are times that you have justification, that you have vindication, that you have a right to say certain truths.
All right.
Right? And they are truth on a level, but they're not the overarching truth in that situation. And if we take the bait and decide to trade off of the current truth that we're experiencing and sow that into a situation, then we end up releasing the thief which steals, kills, and destroys. But instead, if we take that to the Lord and go, here's the thing that I know that I would like to trade in, because if it's not good, then it needs to be something else, because if it's not good, it's not the Lord for that person, right? So we were trained even as kids, the phrase, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Right? And that seems good, but that's not the heart of the Lord. Because if you don't have anything nice to say, go find the Lord, because he always has something good to say. So if you don't have anything nice to say, you've lost connection with the Lord in that scenario. Because there's never a time that he doesn't have something in the way that will reveal love, hope, peace, the fruits of the Spirit into that situation. So if we've lost the ability to say anything good about that situation, then we are actually the ones that are fallen, and we need to repent, turn back towards the Lord, and then imagine what opens up when we turn and allow ourselves to be transformed, what it releases that we can now see towards the other individual, where previously we couldn't see anything good.
Let's give an example of that, because it's when people, because I think that goes over people's heads sometimes. So now I know in my own experience, and you probably have cooler stories, because I'm just going to say you do. But I think of the times of where people would go, well, why aren't you addressing the sin in somebody's life?
Mm-hmm.
There's only been one time ever that I can think of that I've ever even thought about. I even entertained the thought of that.
Sure.
And because I was always kind of raised up in the prophetic under the idea that if you see something, say, in the area, of the lack of integrity or something, whatever area, because I didn't want to use a common one. But if you see something in the area of the lack of integrity, and this person's compulsively lying and manipulating the truth and all this other stuff, and the Lord may show you that, you may see that, and correct me if I'm wrong on the approaching that. Sure. But our object is to go, all right, Lord, well, what are you saying about that? Not tell the person, hey, the Lord showed me that you're a liar, you're a manipulator, and you twist everything to your own benefit and your own gain, and you lack integrity. It's, all right, Lord, what are you speaking to that person in that situation to grab a hold of that? Now, just for clarity's sake, the only time I ever even entertained about going into someone's sin is because the person was speaking and publicly said, there are people in this room that are committing adultery right now, and if you don't come forward and repent, I will call you out. Mm-hmm. Where my response was, if you do that, I will do the same thing.
Right.
To you.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm not saying that was right. Trust me. I'm not saying that was right. But I was young. And in a pastoral situation, and I'm sitting there going no, you're not going to publicly call these people out. I will not stand here and let that happen. Because I was trying to, if they are, and I knew everybody in the room, and I was pretty sure that there wasn't anybody. But still. And so the point being is when we do pick up on those things, or whatever it might be, it's not to go back and go, the Lord has revealed this to me. We always think that why is discernment only to the negative things in people's lives?
Well, that's the big point. Is I'm always concerned if the amount of prophetic revelation that people get is centered around negative things, right? Yeah. And so it is concerning to me when the majority of what people are picking up in the atmosphere, the majority of what people are feeling. It is okay. You can feel whatever you want to feel. You can see whatever you want to see. If the Lord completely removed the veil at any point of what's really going on around you, you would be scared out of your mind. Right? So it's even his love and his protection that we don't see, that we only prophesy in part, that we only see in part. That's actually his love. That's not him limiting our life. That's him loving us so that we don't go mentally insane, right? Or have an emotional breakdown, right? That's
Right.
And anytime that he peels back the veil a little bit, there's an opportunity. What you behold, you become, right? So I know fundamentally that there are bad things happening and that there are good things happening. And I know that the good things end up winning, right? Because we're already operating. We're not trying to achieve victory. We're operating from a place of victory.
Yeah.
And so if we can understand, we're not trying to win the war. We're not trying to turn the tide. We're not trying to. This is a finished work that has already been completed, and we need to learn how to stand in it rather than willingly giving it away to an enemy who tries to trick us and deceive us into coming down into a lower place when the Lord has already elevated us into a place that's seated with him in heavenly places, right? Yeah. Everything that the enemy does is trying to get us to forfeit the identity and the authority that we've already been given in order to trade for something lesser because he's made it look good. And when we fall into the trap of, the judgment and the criticism and all that kind of stuff, what we're doing is not only are we forfeiting our position to be seated and to be at rest and to be at peace, believing that the world can actually still be successful without you having to point out everything that you see going wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's this, I like to say it this way, when you feel a rev that you really need to fix something, that there's a real clarity that comes that you need to act on it, that's not when you need to act on it.
Right.
Because there is supernatural clarity that comes when a situation comes up that you don't like, but it's not the Lord's clarity that's coming.
Yeah.
Because if you really want to get involved in it and you really want to act on it and you really want to fix it, that's not the Lord, because the Lord is patient. He's slow to anger. He's long-suffering. He's enduring. And so there is no downside into kind of, downshifting a couple of gears and go, hey, let me digest this for a minute, because I'm feeling a lot of push. I'm feeling a lot of rev. I'm feeling a lot of inspiration to go blow this thing wide open. Let me downshift for a little while and figure out, man, even if I'm supposed to do this, there's going to be a cost associated to it. And I need to be able to own this and digest this so that I can properly try to serve the person that's in front of me, rather than trying to show the other person that I'm right and they're wrong. Which is not fun.
No.
The other way is so much more gratifying to the flesh, right? The proper way to actually, bring correction and bring that kind of stuff is out of relationship. It's birthed out of relationship. It's birthed out of a trust that when you bring that to the person, they know you have their best interest at mind. It comes out of a place that when you serve that, when you serve the element of the thing that maybe, you're concerned about or they need to share or whatever, it's born out of an understanding that you're with them regardless of what they choose to do with that information. And if we had the depth of relationship between, leaders and all that kind of stuff, if we had the depth of relationship that says, regardless of how you respond to this, I'm still going to be for you, then I think the people on the other side would be more willing to admit that maybe they have a blind spot that you have clarity in. And that's ultimately all that you're describing. We all know that we have blind spots, and that's why it's critically important for us to be surrounded by people that are diverse, that see things from a different angle, that see things from a different perspective, because we need people covering our blind spots in the same way that we're able to cover the blind spots in other people's lives. And covering a blind spot is not going over there and telling them repeatedly that they have a blind spot.
What?
Right, exactly. Covering a blind spot is protecting them and being their defense, being the one that is guarding that spot in their life. You're being protective of it, and you're treating them as the Lord treats us, which is sheltering us, shielding us, protecting us, advocating for us, making intercession for us. He's always vindicating us. He's believing in us, and that's what we can do with other people in the areas where we know, man, they don't see that thing yet. And they don't necessarily have to see that thing yet. I'm going to reach out and I'm going to protect them in this area until the Lord reveals it to them, either supernaturally or through somebody coming to them. And I'm going to still be there for them, whether it's they get taken out or it's happily ever after or anything in between. I mean, there's so many times that I'll use this one as an example. When someone calls you up on the phone and they tell you, hey, I got engaged, right? Mm-hmm. And then the picture that you get is not a good picture, right?
Gotcha.
Right? You can have a dream, you can have a picture, or whatever. And this has happened several times with me, to the point where my temptation is to go, man, I need to dig into this. I need to start asking thought-provoking questions. I need to, try to say it without saying it. We think of all these things, right? Because we don't want to. We know we can't just come out and say like, that's a bad deal, right? We can't potentially alienate a friend that way, but we're going to subtly try to like work it into the conversation and hint around. But the reality is, I have to come to a place where I'm going to go, you know what? I believe that if the Lord gives me an opportunity and I feel like I'm supposed to, then I will take it. Aside from that, I'm going to pray that this person has clarity and that the Lord loves them enough to get through to them if this thing is not from the Lord.
Yeah.
And if I can have a confidence that without me getting involved, does the Lord have enough power to get through to that person and achieve a victorious outcome? But in the end, I have to be the friend that goes, if I'm there to pick you up off the mat after it goes bad, or if I'm there to cheer you as it goes happily ever after, my motivation gets tested whether or not I'm going to be as close to you, whether I think you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. And that shows us how far we still have to go to love like the Lord and be unified above all things.
Man, what that tells me is we have so far to go.
Absolutely, man.
We have so far to go.
Yeah, it's but it's worth it, man. Just I can't. He doesn't. At this point, I don't have to feel or hear or see very much of him in something to go, I don't even like this, but I know it's going to be worth it at some point. Like there are things, and part of that's my personality too. Part of that is just, I believe, I'm optimistic. I believe there are elements of love where I can hope all things and I can believe all things. And that's not a hard area for me. Right. And so it's like he's talked me back into it again, just as I'm ready to go, man, I'm grumbling and I'm complaining or whatever. And then he flashes this little, like, here I am right here. And I'm like all back in again. I'm like, I'll do anything. I'll do whatever you want me to do. This is worth it. I knew it's going to be great, but
you're over there singing Rita Springer.
Yeah.
It's going to be worth it.
Exactly. But the whole point is you just can't, anyway,
I just can't sing is what you're going to say.
It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to get me back in. But I know that there's so much more that we can achieve. There's so much more that we can go with. There's so much more available. And the thought that we have even come close to scratching the surface of what the Lord has for us, it just shows us that, man, we can always be growing. We can always be maturing. It doesn't matter how far we get. We can be thankful for where he's brought us from, and we can be super thankful we're no longer the way that we used to be. But at the same time, there is so much more that we can experience in his love and in the way that he treats people, and in a way of our identity. And if we would not be as rocked, or we would not be as much of a roller coaster ride in our emotions and our feelings, if we truly understood what the Lord's heart was towards us as individuals.
You know what? All this, like, and this is me and my ways of thinking and all that, and so, but like, I used to work for Geico, and oddly enough, in my Facebook memories, I had a picture of the giant gecko. But when Geico does advertising,
Yeah.
they don't ever talk down about another company. That's
Right.
actually one of their marketing philosophies, is they will never speak badly about another company.
Right.
And their mentality is, we're literally giving them free ad space if we're doing that. We just spent $2 million to produce this 27-second commercial with an animated gecko in it.
You don't want them to remember their name.
Exactly. So why would you do that when you could actually just, promote ourselves?
Yeah.
And I think, like, if we begin to think like that, where it's like, we're not going to actually use that situation to speak negatively of a person, and because what we're doing at that point is we're literally, like, partnering with the enemy. And this is something, like, my prayer since, like, middle of last year, which has been incredibly challenging for me, is, God, don't let me have an opinion.
Right.
Because it's so easy to have one.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly easy to have an opinion. And I'm like, God, don't let me have one. Like, it's kind of like, it seems almost like a weird prayer, because you're like saying, like, God, don't let me be human or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, God, don't let me have an opinion that's, like, not you. Like, whatever that means. Like, I just don't want to essentially, my opinion is really not all that important.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think to actually admit that and to live that is completely, it seems like all of a sudden you're like, well, I should just hold my breath and not talk.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but that's not what it is. It's saying, like, God, your ways are higher. Your opinion is higher than my opinion.
Yeah, I think for people that are just getting started in that, or maybe even people that have been plagued by this for a long time, the response to that, though, is that it gets louder before it gets quieter.
Oh yeah,
and
it's easy.
That's the hard part to understand, is that there are so many things that are going on, and this is just it ties right in with what you're saying, but it goes for pretty much anybody that's out there listening. The things that are happening in your life right now are because the Lord has heard your prayers. They just come in packages that we haven't pictured before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I know that truth, and I still don't like the way that he answers the things that I pray.
You're right? Like, I know that truth, and I still don't. Why
do I pray anything? After knowing that truth, it does feel like, why do I even ask for these crazy things like, I want to grow in your love? Why do I ask for things like, for patience? Why do I ask for the ability?
I know that trick. I don't do that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, is it possible to just play reverse psychology on the Lord? Like, Lord, I'd just like to be someone that no one knows, or whatever. Like, how do you say things like, maybe if I say it this way, it'll come in the opposite package, which will actually make me more comfortable or happy. But the point is, when we're asking to have his heart, what comes is in a form that feels like the opposite.
Yeah.
And in order to grow in the prophetic, in order to grow in understanding his heart, in order to grow to be able to communicate, there are so many things that we pray this prayer, we have inspiration, we ask him for something, and then we feel like we've done something wrong because we think the enemy has bombarded and entered into our life all of a sudden.
And now we're like rebuking the enemy, and we're trying to, rally the intercessors.
Yep.
Because we're being attacked, but we're being attacked because we're doing something right.
You're being attacked by the Lord for finally asking him for something he's always wanted to give you.
But it's because you're doing something, which is a different story, I know. Because it's like people all the time are like, well, I'm being attacked because I'm doing something right. That's our mentality.
Maybe.
Let
me clear it up for you. You're either being attacked because you're doing something right, or you're being attacked because you're doing something wrong.
Oh.
There are only you can narrow it down to two possibilities in your life at all times.
Thanks for that spiritual insight. You might be doing it right, you might be doing it wrong, but you'll find out.
But that's the whole point, is we have to get delivered of external signs or circumstances dictating something that's going on in our heart. Now
if only we can remember that next Tuesday, that statement right there. Stop depending on external signs to dictate. Well, stop depending on signs to dictate or interpret things externally that are happening.
Right.
Because I feel like that's what we do all the time.
Sure. Yeah. That one would be a whole next week session for sure.
That would be like a whole next month, session, I think, because so often we look at things and go, well, like I jokingly, like when I first got here, my car got, someone backed into it or sideswiped my car or something. I don't know what they did. And I jokingly said to Jack, I said, it sounds like it's prophetic. I was like, and, but I also jokingly said the same thing to Brad. But I was joking. But like we often go, oh man, like I'm gonna get hit from the side, and it's just people are gonna leave and abandon me. It's a hit and run, Yeah. And it's like, no, your car got hit.
Right.
Which is like why I always like it's this most confusing statement ever. Sometimes the prophetic is much like this statement. Sometimes a box is just a box, and sometimes it isn't. You won't know until you look inside the box, until you look at the box, until you open it up. Sometimes there's something inside that box. Sometimes it's another box. But sometimes it's just literally a box and there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
And you're looking at it going like, there has to be something more. There has to be something greater. What is this? No, it's a box.
Yeah. And you can feel when you're really trying to reach to spiritualize something that's just common sense, natural, happens in the world. You can feel the difference. I mean, I don't know about it. You can tell. You can tell when there are times when a natural event occurs or a baseball game score happens or blah blah blah, whatever it is, and it is like applicable. It may just be applicable to you, right? Or it may be applicable to more people, but it's like a sign. It's like a love letter to the Lord. Hey, I'm still in your life. I'm showing you something that shows that I've woven all these different, layers deep in your life, and I'm working on your behalf, right? There are times that happens. And then there are times that you just bought a gallon of milk and cheese and bread, and it added up to $5.55. There are times that it naturally happens, and there are times that it's a sign from the Lord. But the walk by faith is the whole point of whether I see it or not. There are times when I'm not going to see it, and I'm not even going to see it in spiritual sight because I'm still called to walk by faith. And in the absence of seeing it in the prophetic, in the absence of understanding it, I'm still going to choose to walk by faith, not by sight. And if I never see the cause and effect of why something happened or what that symbol meant or why I went through that thing, I'm still going to believe in an overarching concept that the Lord is good, that he loves me, that he has a plan for my life, and that if I keep going, I ultimately succeed.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like you're talking about that, and I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a friend the other day, and we were talking in the middle of the text conversation. She responds with 444 because she's in California, so it was 444, which then I didn't see it right away, so I responded with 646
There you go.
because it was 646 where I'm at. And then I decided to break out some crazy Christian numerology. And I was like, 646 is, that's, 6 plus 4 plus 6 is 16, 1 plus 6 is 7, therefore it's God. And then
Right.
and then, but we just kept going. And it's just like, that's sometimes what we do. We look at the microwave and it says finished.
Yeah.
What is my microwave saying to me?
Yeah.
It's saying your popcorn's finished. Pull it out.
Or that you're about to die. One of the two. It is
Finished. One of the two.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never even brought it into that concept. Or my Cheerios are speaking to me. They say, ooh.
Yeah. Exactly.
And what they're doing is they're just singing a worship song.
Yeah. Oh my Lord. Yes, that is absolutely the truth. But yeah, I mean, the whole point is that this is all an invitation-based life to participate with what the Spirit and Jesus and the Father want to invite you into. And the only way to mature in it is to just start where you are. And it's funny to say maturing in the prophetic because you're always maturing, but you're never mature.
I think I actually, because it was funny when I did it, I think I called it, when I shared it to my wall, my profile, I think I called it prophetic growth. Yes, I called it prophetic growing.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
I like it.
And so someone said, or your coffee cup is talking to you.
And now that's the Lord.
Mine's saying, fill me up.
All right. My favorite proverb is the one that says, bad coffee corrupts good character. So I love that one. That's my favorite one. So,
oh, Lord.
Yep.
Oh.
Well, now that's about done. Now we're about done for today.
That.
You just, because we're both thinking about coffee and the Lord.
Well, what was it the other day that I don't remember, but I was referring, when we did the outside service, I was referring back to the meme of religion is a guy in church thinking about fishing, and
Yes.
And so I don't remember the context,
man.
But it's gonna be good to see you.
Yes. A couple more weeks. What? 2 more weeks? Something like that.
I don't know. It's creeping up soon.
Yes, I think it's 2 weeks.
So it's yeah. I think we leave at some really early time in the morning, and now we were gonna get there at like 2, and now we're getting there at like 6. Because
awesome. That sounds so good.
It does. Praise the Lord.
All right, buddy.
But you want to pray us out?
Yeah, man. Let's do this. Lord, I thank you so much for just the opportunity to talk with Wes, just to hang out. Lord, it is so awesome to remember even just the ways that you've met us before. Lord, it gives us such an expectation of how you continue to sustain us and how you are going to shape us and mold us into your image even more as we continue to step towards you each day. Lord, I pray that each and every day that you would reveal where you have hidden yourself in our life. Lord, for everybody that's watching, I pray that that this would be like a burning bush moment, the way that you showed up in Moses's life, the way that you broke into his familiar environment. I pray that you would do peculiar things in our familiar environments. I pray that you would start to break in places that cause us to turn aside, to pay attention, Lord, that this would be a season of turning aside and walking into a new revelation of you individually, as groups, as churches. Lord, that this would be a burning bush moment and season for so many of us that would get reconnected to the purposes and plans for those that have been disillusioned and discouraged, that have been sitting outside or feeling like they're isolated or out in the wilderness. I pray that this would be a time that you start to reconnect them and walk them back into the families that you've created for them. You said, it says in your word that you set them in families, Lord. You've set us in families. There are places for those that feel isolated, that feel that they've been downtrodden or cast out. There are places for you to set them back into healthy families and healthy groups. And I pray that you would do that. I pray that you would release good Samaritans during this time that would pick up those that have been hurting and dying on the side of the road, and that they would put them back into a place on a pathway and a recovery back to health. Lord, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, financial health. I pray that you would release good Samaritans all over the country, all over the world, that would have your heart to not leave anyone behind as we step into the promises that you've ordained and predestined for us during this season. I pray that you would just continue to awaken us, that you would cause our eye to see you more completely in every season and every circumstance, that we would catch you in ways that we've never seen you before, and that it would bring a fresh hope and a fresh encouragement to those that have been weary during the journey in this last season. In Jesus' name.
Man, there's just a good presence of the Lord right now, and I just pray that wherever you're at, may you just find that moment and let the Lord just minister to you right now. Let him just minister to you where you're at right now. More than we would ever want to speak to you, he does.
Yeah.
He's always wanting to talk to you. And you will know his voice. You will know his voice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, it's fun, man. I appreciate getting the chance to hang out with you every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday. I love it. I love it. Well, guys, we'll be back here tomorrow morning. Not Stephen and I. Actually, my friend Kelly will be with us, and we're just going to be encouraging and ministering to you tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. That's Central Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or 9 a.m. Pacific Time. I have no idea what time that is in Hawaii. But we will see you tomorrow.